28 years later's infected will be very different thanks to one subtle sequel change. The infected of 28 days later and 28 weeks later are some of the most terrifying figures in horror cinema, rage-fueled, fast-moving, and brutally relentless. They redefined the zombie genre with their speed and fury, making the infected more terrifying than traditional shambling corpses. Now, with 28 years later finally on the horizon, fans can expect a return to this chilling world. But a subtle change teased in the sequel's early development hints at something even more disturbing. The infected may not just be faster or more numerous this time. They may be evolving. Rage refined. The evolution of the virus. The rage virus was originally depicted as a fast-acting pathogen that turned humans into berserking monsters within seconds of exposure. It was a blunt instrument, a virus that robbed its hosts of all higher thought and left behind only primal rage. But a small detail emerging from the sequel's conceptual notes hints that the virus may no longer be as straightforward. According to director Danny Boyle and writer Alex Garland, 28 years later will explore not just the aftermath of the virus, but its mutation. In a recent interview, Garland mentioned that biology doesn't stand still, and that they were interested in showing what a virus like rage might look like after decades in the wild. That one line changes everything. Because if the virus has mutated, not just genetically, but behaviorally, it could mean the infected are no longer mindless. And that could make them exponentially more dangerous. Smarter monsters are scarier monsters. In the first two films, the infected were terrifying but predictable. They were violent, fast, and unstoppable in a straight line, but they were also easily fooled, distracted, or lured into traps. That limitation was part of what made the human characters' survival tactics feel believable. But what if the infected started showing signs of intelligence? Imagine infected that could coordinate or lie in wait instead of charging headlong into danger. What if they retained fragments of memory or worse, emotion? A horde of mindless infected is terrifying. Horde that thinks, that plans, that waits. That's the stuff of nightmares. Garland's reference to decades in the wild also implies that the virus has had time to adapt to different hosts, environments, and perhaps even human attempts at controlling or curing it. That could lead to entirely new types of infected, some perhaps even more human on the surface, blending in until it's too late. A subtle change with huge implications. So what is this subtle change that sets the stage for the infected's evolution? It lies in the premise of 28 years later itself, that the world has moved on. The rage virus is no longer considered a global threat. Humanity believes it's under control or even eradicated. That societal assumption leads to neglect, complacency, and most importantly, opportunity for the virus. In the first film, the outbreak was fresh and widespread. In the second, a misguided attempt to repopulate London led to disaster. But 28 years later reportedly opens in a world where the virus has faded into myth. A world that has let its guard down. In this context, the infected are no longer just rabid survivors, they're legend. And when legends return, they tend to come back changed. This shift in tone changes how the virus operates within the story. If humanity no longer fears rage, then it will no longer be prepared for it. Which means the virus can spread quietly, covertly, strategically. This is no longer a viral explosion, it's a silent invasion. From contagion to conspiracy. Another potential implication of the infected's evolution is the introduction of a more complex narrative, one that edges into psychological horror. If the infected can think, can hide, or even mimic humanity, then no one is safe. This turns the infected from external threats to internal ones. Trust becomes a luxury. Paranoia takes center stage. That small, subtle shift from seeing rage, imagining it as